If you really want to be great at anything, it's only 2 steps. Number 1, know more of the things you're supposed to do, and 2, do more of those things that you know you're supposed to do. I'd literally become a millionaire, and my mom was still sending me job ads. Sometimes parents just don't get it because they just want the best for you, and that security is important for them. The more you get excited about failing, the less you care about failing. It doesn't mean you don't want to do a good job. It doesn't mean you won't get butterflies, but you can learn to get them to fly in formation.
Hey guys, and welcome to the very first episode of the Hero Podcast, which is actually kicking off the Hero channel. This is designed to inspire people to start that journey, empower them on that journey, and compel them to finish that journey. And what better way to kick us off than with one of my business partners and the co-creator of Hero Channel, Barratt Kennett. Barratt hasn't done many exciting things in his life. He's a pretty boring guy. Just kidding. He's an award-winning CEO, best-selling author, Australian champion, cage fighter. He was a stripper at one point as well, and can actually make balloon animals. Is that right?
Why are you going to tell the public that? You give me this great lead up and then you just make me a nerd in front of everyone. I can make like 2 balloon animals.
2 balloon animals. Which ones?
A poodle and a giraffe, which is basically a poodle, but you make the neck longer.
Classic. Cool.
So it gets bitches.
Sweet. So what are we doing here today?
Cool. Well, what we thought would be a really good inaugural podcast, because you'll see a bit of me here and there, more for the straight to camera stuff, the actual educational stuff. The problem is I'm an abysmal listener. I've got the worst ADD of anyone I know, and I am certainly not fit to host a podcast, whereas Zach, obviously, whenever you start a business, you want to make sure that you've got someone with the same goals but different skill sets, is the best listener and best question asker I think any of us have ever met. So I think we're going to really play off each other well. So Zach will be handling the podcast duties. I'll handle a little bit more of the actual educational stuff as we go on. But today, rather than having guests on, and we'll try and keep it as fresh as we can. We'll try and keep the podcast where occasionally we'll have guests on, or maybe we'll just go more content based. What we thought would be really apropos for our first one was to ask our staff. So we run a company called Efcomm Sales and Marketing. We actually won the award last year for best company to work for in Australia, that was pretty cool accolade. We put a lot of effort into our staff satisfaction to make sure. Basically, we just want to try and build an army of people that make a lot of money and have a lot of fun. And it was really cool to receive that award. And what we thought we'd do to start the podcast was we got most of our staff, so we've got about 50 staff now, and we got them to send in various questions that they'd like to know, that they'd be able to, I guess, level their life up or level themselves up or help them on their journey, either within the business or out of the company. And we basically just sorted them all out, picked the ones that we thought were going to be the best, and we're going to yeet them in a podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy. Zach's going to rattle them off. I'll probably just answer. I'd imagine if you've got something to add, by all means, we'll go for it.
Let's do it.
But the plan of attack is just to give you guys, hopefully these are questions that you guys have that you've wanted to know, and it's not like you can always just Google them and get a right answer. So hopefully we can give you some cool ones. And also this format means we can chop it up into micro content and spam it all over our social media. So it's a win-win. Love it. Want to get into it?
Beautiful. So as a leader, how do I improve my credibility so my staff look up to me?
So that is a really important part of leadership, right? There's a really good saying, it's nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So in order to build your credibility, a lot of business owners or managers, or especially people that were thrust into a management position but don't really, don't have the skills to be a manager yet, they think that you've got to keep all your staff or the people that work for you or that you're leading at arm's length, that you can't really be too close with them. And I find that's very outdated, right? For instance, looking in our company, I look at all of the business partners and managers within the business. They're all mates of mine. Everyone was invited to my wedding, like everyone. We're all super close. And those people that say you can't be close with your staff, they're the same kind of people that they're the people that are saying if you're a girl, you got to wait 5 dates before you sleep with somebody. It's a weird analogy, but that's not how respect works. It doesn't come from pretense or distance or chase. It's 2 things: how you create credibility and a loyal following of people that care about you. Number 1, do you openly care about your guys? Can they tell you care about them? And that comes with your actions. That's going to be, am I reliable? If I say I'm going to do something, do I do it? Am I going to hang out with you outside of work if I can tell something's up? Am I going to pull, go for a beer with you and say, hey man, what's going on? No, I'm fine. No, what's going on? All of those little things, being there for people, as well as your ability and that they look at you and see you as what I call the highway, not the speed bump. Because in management, a lot of times, especially if you're not a strong manager, people look at you as a speed bump and they're going to want to try and see if they need you or if they can supersede you. And what you want to be able to establish as a leader, as part of that showing that you care, is that by following you, they're going to end up better off than they would have otherwise. Also, showing that you care and adding value is step number one. But if you are going to be friends with your staff, which I do recommend, what you actually need is the second part, which is boundaries, right? You've got to be able to pull people up on things. And the tricky bit, the why people say you shouldn't be friends with staff or at least close with them, is because it makes it harder to say no when they inevitably push your boundaries. And it does hurt if you're not used to it. So I thought we were mates. Why are they pushing that boundary? Why did they lie to me? And it's just getting really good at, we call it get in early, get in nice. If you can just be really good at the moment they do something that you know they shouldn't have done, just going, hey man, can I have a chat real quick? And being able to pull them up and set agreements on that. That is how you establish credibility and the right to lead.
Beautiful. And that's that ability to lead. How about winning over people's credibility in terms of when they walk into the room, you're the guy that people want to be their leader?
That's an interesting question, right? So sometimes you can get it right away. Like if you've got charisma, a good sense of style goes a long way. Like look like you've got money. Even if you're not particularly materialistic, which I don't think I am. I don't even have a great sense of style, but I dress like I do because you're projecting your own values on them, whereas you might have people that really care. If they're emulating your life, if they're looking to you and thinking, okay, I want to be where that person is, well, they're going to want to know that is what they want. And so if you've got, like a Rolex, or if you've got a nice suit, or if you're driving a nice car, even though it seems materialistic, it sets a good example. And it's actually quite funny because in sales, like traditionally, a car, for instance, is what's called a depreciating asset, where it's a stupid investment because you lose money on it every year, unlike a house or stocks or something like that. The funny thing is, though, is if you're leading, especially in a role where people want to make a lot of money or be successful, buying a nice car is actually an appreciating asset because it inspires your staff to be like you, and you actually end up making more money because of it. So I thought that quite interesting.
100%.
And that's the materialistic one. I think in a non-materialistic way, good vocabulary goes a long way. Being able to speak in a commanding way, not being a mumbler, having good tonality and not just talking monotone and speaking like this, right? That all adds into your charisma or your aura. People that, I'm an empath. You mean you can read tonality and facial expressions like everyone else? Like, yeah. but that aura comes from you looking like you're a high status person. The way you stand, the way you speak, the way you walk. You have to exhibit confidence and develop those habits as well. And I think that's definitely a journey. If that's not something that people are good at, definitely something to
get better at it.
Yeah.
I really like the car thing, right? Because there's nothing worse than rocking up. Let's say you start a new job and your boss is hyping you up about making all this money. You're gonna be the next superstar in this business, and then you see your boss get into that car and they've got a beat up Honda Jazz or something, right? So I think that's so incredibly valuable.
Incongruent, right? And there are also, like I went to a conference last week where the guy, one of the speakers, they told a story about him, but he's worth something like $50 million now.
Yeah.
And just as an angel investor, incubator, very computer-based guy. But he was driving, even as a multimillionaire, was driving like a 1980s Volvo that he had to top up oil in it every time he would drive. And for some people that might impress, because they said, why do you do that? Why don't you buy a nice car? He says, I don't want people to think I've changed. And that's beautiful on paper. That's wonderful on paper if you're not in a position that you need to inspire others to do what you do. So I think it's an interesting concept to navigate.
Yeah, cool. And on the topic of staff, right, what is the biggest turnoff you see from people applying for jobs?
The biggest turnoff that I see, I guess it depends what part of the pipeline, right? And obviously you handle most of the recruitment for the business, because what not a lot of business owners realize that recruitment's actually a marketing and branding endeavor.
100%.
It's really, really powerful. People don't understand how they display themselves, right? Like if I wear a Rolex, I say I'm successful. If I wear Polo, I say I like class. If I wear Nike, I say I like victory and I'm athletic, right? People are always, even our accents and the way that we carry ourselves, it's all designed to show other people what our values are so that we can attract people like us. And what not a lot of people realize, in any conversation you strike up with a stranger, what's the first question they ask? What do you do for a living?
Yeah, true.
Right?
Yep.
And that is branding. What you say you do for a living is displaying yourself. And so I think that to a lot of your ability now as a marketer actually came from recruitment, because we made the realization that recruitment is actually a marketing and branding job, and we need to be communicating with people's values so they can align themselves with our values.
Yep.
Which is why a company that like ours that is so focused on developing our staff and creating a group of mates, like really close friends, where everyone's making money, everyone's having fun, and most importantly, people are leveling up and not staying stagnant. When they come into the door, so one of the first turnoffs, kind of a long-winded way to get to the answer, is when they come into the interview and I go, so what ideally are you looking for yourself at the moment? And they just go, a job, or full-time work, or something better than my last job, which you can tell they're a complainer right away.
Yeah.
You want them to go, what ideally are you looking? Well, I was looking online and I saw that you guys really do a lot of training and development, and I'd love to learn, and I've seen some of the videos, your team looks so fun. I'd really like to be part of that and progress a career with you. It's like, that's money. If I get someone like that, you're in with a chance right away.
100%.
But for people, I guess the number one turnoff for me, because I don't have much to do with the screening, because obviously we have administrators and screening staff, people whose job is to handle the recruitment for us. So I don't really see the resumes, so I don't know if I'd be able to tell you what's good on a resume or not. We definitely like sports. Sports is always a good one. It's like winning championships of some kind, always a win. But for the most part, it's just showing a bit of fire and actually wanting to be there for a reason rather than wanting to be there for a job.
Beautiful. Cool. This one's a funny one. Is work-life balance for pussies?
Who sent that in? It sounds like a Sean one. Is work-life balance for pussies? Well, I mean, if your definition of a pussy is somebody who is not tough, right? I don't know. I think that work-life balance in terms of I want to have a schedule that is, I go to work at 9 and I finish at 5. Again, pussy's a strong word and it might be a little controversial. Is it for people who prefer security and consistency over risk and unpredictability? Yes. Right? Because there are so many benefits to being an entrepreneur, or to being ideally in an entrepreneurship model where you can be in a company where you can actually progress into a partnership or equity position down the line. That is really beneficial, but the trade-off for something like that is that it's hard, and you're going to have long days, and you're going to be lonely, and it's going to be difficult, and you're going to be tested, and you're going to have to sacrifice sitting at home and watching Netflix and recharging in order to invest in that future so that it pays dividends later on. And that does require some toughness. So yes, kind of, work-life balance is pussies, but also at the same time, you've got to factor in, we all run out of gas, and you've got to be, being aware of your gas tank and how to refill it is really powerful too. 100%. So for instance, for me, a consistent morning is really good for me. If I'm learning and training, because training when you're, especially doing something active like boxing or something like that, that's meditation. You're just not thinking about anything, and that's how you recharge. Or you're learning and growing, that's how you recharge. Or you're praying or meditating in the mornings, that's how you can keep your battery going as long as you can. But for me, I'd rather have a consistent morning and then take a holiday, a 10-day holiday, an 8 to 10-day holiday every 6 to 12 months, knowing that that's way better. That still keeps my gas tank full, but I can still accomplish all the things I want to.
100%. So what's your morning look like normally?
Yeah, it's a good question. So up at 4:30. The reason is because from about 7:30, my phone will just start blowing up. That's once you get to a position where you're no longer getting paid for what you do, you get paid for what you know. I don't actually do anything now. I haven't made a sale in like 2 years, but I'll be able to call people and delegate and give them the advice they need or mentor them or whatever. And that will just explode from 7:30 because people, if you're getting paid for what you know, people are going to want to get what you know out of your head.
Yeah.
And me waking up early, and I go to bed at 9, like it's nothing crazy, but having that consistency. Number one, waking up at the same time every single day, you align what's called your circadian rhythm. So you know that when you're like, you've probably experienced it, you know when you're really just consistent and your routine,
100%.
and you wake up a minute before your alarm goes off every day, that's because your body actually knows what time it calibrates, what time it's supposed to wake up. And waking up isn't like an immediate process. It'll take 20, 30 minutes to, okay, I'm going to reboot the kidneys, reboot the liver, reboot the respiratory, so whatever needs to be
So like
ticked
30-minute lag, right, in the morning.
If you're waking up inconsistently or snoozing your alarm, you're pulling yourself out before you're ready. Like you're pulling yourself out of sleep before you're ready to wake up.
Yeah.
And no wonder you spend the first 3 hours of the day groggy trying to get your bearings. Whereas me, if I wake up consistently every day, I'm up. And so I'll do that. I'll do a creative endeavor. So right now I'm working on my second book. So I'll do that right away. Then once it gets to about 5:15, I'll go to the gym, I'll box. Right, and I'll turn my sauna on. I'll come home and I read in the sauna. So I've got 20 minutes, so I can read 20 minutes every day in the sauna.
Yep.
And that way I'm leveling up every day. And then I'll shower off, do some planning, and then head straight into the office. And because I've got that perfectly consistent morning every day, what you'll find is you can deal with more crap as it comes to you. Because if you haven't had a consistent morning, interruptions will give you cortisol. It'll stress you out because you're like, oh, it's unpredictable. What do I do? But if you've already had 3 hours of consistency before your phone goes off, and inevitably problems start flowing in, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, cool.
You've had a win.
Yeah,
You've won.
but you're also established that you're safe. You've told your brain you're safe, and it's not going to give you that same amount of cortisol. So that priming routine is really, really powerful for me.
Beautiful. How do you read and not sweat all over the book?
You do. Like I said, if anyone has a sauna in their home and is interested on how to do this, which I can't imagine would be a huge component of people, you get a towel, right? You put it over your leg, and you just sporadically wipe your hands as you read, and your book stays nice and dry.
How good. How good. Cool. I think that ties really well, like the work-life balance thing ties really well into what we were just talking about before in terms of turn-offs for interviews, right? Because if someone's coming in and they're saying they just want a job, chances are they're someone who is also saying, literally in the first couple minutes of the interview, I'm looking for work-life balance as well, right?
Yeah, and look, the thing is, and it's not to slight those people. People have different values than you and I have. They may not want the same things, right? Maybe they value that more than they value success
100%.
when they weigh it up.
Or maybe they're saying that because they've got a different creative endeavor, or they've got a side project or a business that they're building at the same time as well.
Or also that their idea of success is getting a higher and higher base.
Yeah.
So they'll kind of monkey bar themselves from like this base. I'm on 70K, and now I'm on 75K, and now I'm on 80K. And jump around jobs either within their business or to other companies to try and level up their salary. And the problem is that's not how business works.
Yeah.
You don't get paid for your time. You get paid for the value that you can create. And that's why I love something like sales where there's commissions. It's like, if you want an instant pay rise, just learn more and then work harder. And
easy.
you can have the same guy making $1,200 a week and someone doing the exact same hours, exact same job, making $3,000 a week, in the same job, because you just get that immediate feedback loop. And we see that all the time with our staff.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. How do you overcome the fear of failure?
I don't have it anymore. I've just conditioned myself to love it. I've gotten so many positive feedback loops and rewards from just embracing failure. One of the things I said at our recent conference when I was speaking is, there's an old Brian Tracy quote that I love. It's if you want to double your rate of success, you need to triple your rate of failure. Like, the reason that I'm where I am within the business is because I failed more than most other people in the business have combined. Because every time, as long as you're accountable and as long as you can accept it, it's the best teacher that you can imagine, because it's literally like, hey, here's why you didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've really got to fish for that accountability. Like, there's a really plausible reason you didn't do it. So let's say let's say you hire somebody and they're lazy, so their call rate's not good, or they're not knocking enough doors, or they're not stopping enough people in a center, or whatever sales division they're in, right? And it's very easy for you to go, man, they're just so lazy. And for me, I'm like, okay, how can I find a way to make that my fault? And it's like, how good's my goal? Have I had a goal setting session with them? to make them want to work harder, and then how good is my goal setting ability. So even if I have that goal setting session with them and it doesn't work, I'm still going to find a way to go, man, maybe I suck at that. Once I've taken on that failure of me asking them to do it and they haven't done it, that's still my failure. And then I can then go, all right, let me pick up the phone. Who's really good at getting people performing that are lazy? Call them, see what works for them, implement that, and now I'm just getting better and better. And because if you're, like the book I'm writing now is called Do the Things, right? So it's all about the concept I talk about. It's the greatness equation, where if you really want to be great at anything, it's only 2 steps. Number 1, know more of the things you're supposed to do, and 2, do more of those things that you know you're supposed to do. And so it's really just about learning and education and discipline. If you want to be the best at anything, know more about it, and then just be super consistent doing those things. And I think that being able to implement that, when you encounter failure, you just get so excited to fail. Like, it still sucks, but you just brush yourself off and go, okay, how can I get better? And then if you're thinking about getting better, you don't really care if you win or lose, because if my goal is to improve, I'm either going to get that win and be stoked, or I'm not, and I'm going to get better. And so rather than my mood being, oh, I had a good day, oh, I had a bad day, oh, I had a good day, oh, I had a bad day, in reality, every day is a good day, especially the bad days. And I think you've kind of had your own little journey with that over the last couple of months.
100%, definitely. And so where would you say that fear of failure comes from? Do you know?
Well, it's innate. No. Every single person is, people say you only have 2 failures, right? And this is what, you'll hear every motivational speaker and their brother will say this, like, we're only born with 2 failures, fear of falling and fear of loud noises. And that's technically sure, but we are also wired with a fear of failure because human beings are tribal creatures, where the way that civilization has evolved is infinitely faster than how we evolve, or where we evolved to. We've certainly overtaken that.
100%.
We're used to being in 150-person tribes, and if you're not adding value to that tribe when there's food scarcity or if there's an issue, they will kick you out of that tribe. And the moment you're alone as a human being, which we're not exactly the most adept predators naturally, right? That means certain death. So the fear of failure is literally a survival instinct. If the tribe sees you fail, you run the risk of them ostracizing you and exiling you. It's a normal failure for every single person. You just have to develop the habits to hack your way around it, because it's such a valuable thing to incur.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the more, to your point, the more you do it, the more you can hack that. The more you get excited about failing, the less you care about failing. It doesn't mean you don't want to do a good job, right? It doesn't mean you won't get butterflies for something. The butterflies are always going to be there, but you can learn to get them to fly in formation. And that's the secret, Yeah, cool. You mentioned before, you actually talked about this with your staff, and when you're talking about credibility, is boundaries really important. So how do you get better holding boundaries?
So that's an interesting question, because some people are already good at it. If you're like a D-type bull personality, you have no problem pulling people up on things, right? Because you like confrontation. But for everyone else, except for that 1/4 of the workforce, or team members or whatever, it's a little hard, because again, your brain is naturally worried that conflict could turn into something bad. Your prefrontal cortex is firing, going, look at, and this is why introverts hate conflict so much, because introverts have more activity in their frontal lobe, so they're thinking about all the 5,000 worst case scenarios that can go wrong. That's why it's quite draining socially. Why introverts lose their battery socially so quickly is because they're constantly worried about the implications of what they're going to say, whereas extroverts, especially really high extroverts like me, I offend people all the time because I don't have any filter. Right?
It's true.
And so it's very draining when you're not used to enforcing boundaries. The thing that makes it not draining, just like anything, like if you were to go sprinting every day, that would be draining. If you were going to do hill sprints, the first time you do it, that would be draining. But you get used to it, and eventually it's still going to be a little bit draining, but you get more efficient with your energy doing that. And 100%. It's very similar with setting boundaries, is the more that you do it, the easier it gets. But how do you do it? It's really, really easy. You ask permission. The conflict comes from them defending themselves, and if they aren't prepped properly, they will defend themselves and you'll have a conflict. Whereas if I just say, hey bro, can I give you some feedback? And you go, yeah. Well, now you're in a receiving mindset. You're not gonna fight back because you've been primed accordingly. And then when I say, can I give you some feedback? You go, yes. Your brain's gonna go, oh, okay, I'm gonna learn. And it'll take on whatever I'm gonna say. So the number one tip for boundaries, number one, do it more often and as quickly as you can.
Yep.
Like, the longer you leave it, the harder it is to do it. But number two is just ask permission and you'll be fine.
Perfect. Cool. You mentioned before you've failed a lot, right? So what are some of the biggest mistakes you learned from early on?
Ooh, that's a good one. I guess it depends. Like there's going to be different challenges you face at every level up. You know, like level one. Like let's say I started as a business owner or someone that wanted to start a business, or you're in a sales role, which is the best head of steam that you can get before starting a business, is you got to learn how to sell.
Yeah.
And so my failures were very much, okay, I didn't get as many sales as that person, or I didn't get as many sales as I felt like I could. What was I doing wrong? And then I'm sort of learning from the masters, and I'm pulling things in and setting challenges and all that kind of stuff, learning how to master your mentality. You know, the sales are very the failures are quite controllable.
Yeah.
Then when you start leading people, which is and not everyone does it. You get a lot of solopreneurs and people that can't be bothered with that, and they're really good just behind a computer and going hard, and they have that attention span, and they have the attention to detail, and they get it. Good for you guys. I wish I could be like that. I'm not like that. My skill is people, leading people, which is problematic because they inevitably, people are volatile and they let you down, and they, all sorts of things can go wrong. But that's the gifts, that's the skill set that I've been given, and that's what I'm going full steam ahead with. So then the failures become, as you start to build a team, your failures then become that person didn't achieve that thing.
Yeah.
And that's why accountability is so big, because it's so easy to point a finger and go, they didn't do that, as opposed to, why didn't they do that and how could I help? And so learning that accountability, that was one that was struggling. I got really stuck at about 10 staff because you can only really manage at most maybe 7 direct reports, people directly reporting to you effectively. 4 to 5 is kind of your golden zone. Up to 7, then you drastically lose your effectiveness as a leader trying to manage everyone yourself.
Yep.
And I really got stuck at around that 10 head count because I was doing everything myself, and I was answering everyone's questions, and I was doing everything for them. And then I learned how to, when they would come to me with a problem, instead of giving them the answer, I would ask them what their idea was. And eventually they would stop coming to me because they knew I was just going to say, well, what do you think you should do?
Yeah.
And that would graduate into, okay, here's what I'm thinking about doing, what do you think? And then it would eventually, the final form was, here's what I did, what do you think? And that's how you get a self-sufficient team. And that took us from 10 staff to 30 staff. So there's all sorts of different challenges, and the challenges introduce themselves as failures, and then you've got to realize that it's like, okay, well, here's another fight that I get to compete in,
Yeah, beautiful. Any biggest takeaway from when you were a sales rep?
Ooh, like early on?
Like really early on. What was the biggest mistake you made when you were just starting out on the journey?
I'm very fortunate because I had a really good person train me how to sell,
Yep.
and I was very naturally equipped. I got pretty good pretty quickly, which again, a lot of extroverts will get good quickly. Introverts, because they don't have any of those skills naturally, takes them about 3 weeks for the penny to drop.
Yep.
So I kind of came out the gate swinging, and I just loved it, and because I had that desire to, coming from a fighting background, I just loved to scrap. And so I don't know if I had any particularly hard challenges. The only one that really beat me, the only challenge that won, was the opinions of my family and friends around the job.
Yeah.
Because I'd get all the time. I'd made in 9 months or 8 months when I first started in sales, I'd made more money than I'd ever made. I was having more fun than I'd ever had, and I grew more as a person than I ever had. And I had so much momentum, and I loved it. But then it was like, my mom would be like, oh, and my parents are the best. I'm very lucky to have great parents. They'd say, oh, honey, when you do the next thing, or when what kind of jobs do you think you want to get when you're done with this little sales thing? And those opinions affected me, and I ended up leaving the industry for 3 years, getting a real job, or doing what I got my degree in, which again was the biggest waste of money of my life, and or things I thought I wanted to do, and none of them were as fulfilling to me as face-to-face sales was.
100%.
And so that was the only mistake that or the biggest failure that I copped, and it wasn't until 3 years that I rectified it. But I learned from that because I realized it's like, if I just never quit, every other person, every other one of my competitors or people that want to achieve what I want to feel, they're going to have those same, I don't know if I can do this anymore moments. And if I just outlast all of them and keep getting better, there's me being the best becomes inexorable. You can't stop it. And that was probably what I learned from that. Looking back, I wasted 3 years of a career.
Yeah. Where would you be if you were 3 years ahead now?
I'd be 3 years ahead of where I am now, you know?
Yeah.
And I think but I've learned from that, and I just know now it's like I'm not ever going to throw in the towel ever, because I love it, I'm great at it, and I can serve others with it.
100%. And I think that's really hard for young people, especially when they first get their foot in the door with sales, right? Because normally you're knocking on people's doors, like stopping people at shopping centers, you're cold calling people, you're doing one of the annoying sales jobs, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it gets so much, why it's hard for families or friends to understand, like, why are you doing that?
It's a tricky one, right? It is a tricky one, and I think it's the tide is kind of starting to shift now.
Yeah.
Like this is a really cool fact. 66 on the dot % of Gen Zers don't actually think university is necessary anymore.
Yeah.
That's new. That didn't used to be a thing, but people have realized it's overpriced, it doesn't help anything, and there's a lot more money in like blue collar jobs like tree lopping or being an electrician or working on a pipeline. You can make, FIFO work, you can make a lot of money without going to university. And I think people are now, because of social media and because of a lot of influencers, they're seeing that sales is the way to having that financial freedom that you want, or that being able to be an entrepreneur. I think it's something like 80% of CEOs of Forbes 500 companies came from a sales management background.
Cool.
And that's the thing that people that really want to be successful are going, well, I'm going to do that.
So what would you tell someone who's young, who wants to get into a job, and that their parents or their mentor is telling them to go to university?
Well, it just depends on what you want, right? Like if you really care about, like if you want to be a doctor, go to university to study being a doctor. There are some things that you need a degree to do. You need a degree to do. You need to, maybe in finance or maybe in law, you actually need that qualification, because that qualification is a filter. Like 80% of people who do a psychology degree don't end up practicing in psychology. You want that, because they're playing with, do you really want your surgeon to have just coasted by?
Yeah.
You want that, that kind of thing to have an elite, cream of the crop kind of feel. And that's what university is good for. And you obviously have to learn how to do that thing.
Yeah.
But for something like sales, or if you want to be in business, if you want to be successful in business or in finance, don't. And if you have parents that are overbearing, or you find just give them a timeline. Go, hey, I'm going to do this sales thing. Give me 2 years, right? And if I haven't achieved what I want to achieve in 2 years, I will go to university. But that's how I'd handle it, is just give them a clear deadline that your parents can still kind of carry on hope that you are gonna end up going back to that thing. And in the meantime, if you end up making more than you ever would have as that doctor or as that lawyer, then you can tell them to shove it.
Yeah, 100%.
And for instance, my mom, I was a millionaire. I'd literally become a millionaire, and my mom was still sending me job ads, like Seek ads, for like BDM, $80K a year business development roles.
Yeah.
And they sometimes parents just don't get it, because their values, they just want the best for you, and that security is important for them. And I tell this story quite a bit. My mom didn't get it, but then I gave her a BMW, and she hasn't said anything since. So prove them wrong with your success, not with your words.
100%. Yeah, so it's such a caring mother thing to do, to jump on Seek.
Mum's the best.
Find their son a job. Cool. What advice do entrepreneurs need to hear?
What advice do entrepreneurs need to hear? Ooh, there's some good ones in there. Number one, you got to learn how to sell. I don't care who you think you are. If you can't sell, you don't have a business. Not only does it give you the ability to generate income, but it also toughens you up.
Yep.
The only way you get better in pressure and strife is by putting yourself in positions where you're dealing with pressure and strife, and you learn how to fight in the pocket, and go toe to toe with the things that you confront. You can get that in sport, you can get that in fighting, but there's no better place to sell. So number one thing, if you're an entrepreneur and you don't already know how to sell and you wouldn't consider yourself a great seller, put that on hold for 6 months, go get a sales job, learn sales, go for something low ticket, even go for gold. So that's advice number one. If they're already a good seller, if you're already a good seller, or at least you're competent selling, the best advice I could give an entrepreneur is the thing that you've really got to get through your head is that nobody is coming to save you. That nobody, whatever idea you've got, because I think as an entrepreneur, you generally have quite an imagination. You can be quite visionary because you've got the combination of imagination, competency, so you're good at things, and confidence.
Optimism.
And the belief that you can, if sometimes delusional, that you can make things work where other people go, oh, I couldn't do that, right? And so you've already got that in your favor, but the thing that I think, because people just aren't used to the speed and effort required to execute. The urgency, you have an idea. You and I have an idea. We talk about, I'm thinking about doing an Efcomm product. And I go, yeah, what do you think? Oh, well, we might be selling, healthy pet food delivered to your door. It's like, it's a great idea. Hold on 1 second. And I'll call my mate Bryce, who's like an Efcomm gajillionaire. I'll go, hey, what do you think about this? And then I'll set up, that could potentially, just because I've stopped what I'm doing to address that thing urgently, I could potentially set up a JV, make $1 million in 6 months, and then let it fizzle out. Or sell it off, right? The opportunities come from being immediate and urgent. And for me, I'll stop what I'm doing to engage so I don't forget. That's how much I've drilled that urgency. And that comes from an understanding of no one's gonna do it for you. No one's gonna save the day. Even people that are good at something, if you're not taking point on the things for your business, they don't happen. They get drawn out. There's Steven Schwartzman, the guy that owns Blackstone, like one of the biggest investors in the world. I read his book recently, and there's a line in there that I just love. He says, "Time wounds all deals." If you have a business idea, and that's, as an entrepreneur, you've got plenty of them, right? If you got a business idea and you chat about it with somebody and you're like, yeah, this could get some momentum, this could get some traction, and then you have a meeting next week, and then you go, okay, let's meet up again in 2 weeks and let's have these things done. And then that meeting gets canceled, and then you got another meeting, and by that time, he's now been, that potential business partner has been sucked into another venture, and now I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the time, maybe let's put this on the back burner. It doesn't happen. Time wounds all deals. And so really, you have to, if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to take point. You have to be the guy or the girl, be the person who's responsible for getting it done, and make it your urgent priority until it's done.
Take action straight away.
Immediate action.
100%. And so this is, what traits are young people lacking when starting out?
Tenacity, right? I think a lot of the generation now that are sort of coming out, Gen Z, the people that are kind of coming into the workforce now, we didn't have 8th place trophies when I was, and I'm not like super old, I'm 33, but there was a clear blue ribbon for first and a red one for second. There was trophies, and there wasn't anything past third, right? And now a lot of the kids are getting consolation prizes, and the parents make excuses for the kids so that they feel better about themselves rather than actually saying, where did you go wrong? Because they don't want the kid to have to wear that failure. They don't acclimate them to it. And then they get out into the workforce, and I don't say this with any judgment, but people feel safe and protected, and that fairness is ubiquitous in the world. That the concept of fairness is everywhere in the real world, and it's not. And they get out in the real world and they see that somebody is making way more money than them, and because they were never raised to learn that if you work harder and if you learn more and if you apply yourself and if you're committed and you say no to the things you don't want, you'll then become more successful. They see that success and they think it's that fortune unfairly favored that person, and they'll pick flaws in that person, and they'll think the world's not fair, and they'll want to bring that person down. And I think it's finding real leaders, people who are equipped to lead in this generation is hard, right? And I think young people, the message that I would hope that they take is really take some time to accept that life is not fair. You may have had safe spaces in your school. You may have had, consolation prizes. Everything might have been bubble wrap for you. You might have had a great family, right? But when it comes to real life, the people who succeed are the ones who get the results. And even if you've got a good excuse not to get the results, you were set back, you grew up in a bad household, you had a really bad upbringing, you didn't have access to certain things. It's like the world doesn't care, success doesn't care, money doesn't care. Reconcile with the fact that fairness isn't going to be out there in the real world. The only thing you can do is work, execute, and get results.
100%. Cool. Last question. This is actually ties into what we were talking about before. Do you need a degree to be good in a business?
Do you need a degree to be good in business? Hell no. Hell no, right? In business, right? Do you need a degree to be good in medicine? Absolutely, right? Do you need a degree to be good in law? Absolutely. Do you need a degree to be good in business? I actually think it's a disadvantage. Having got one, I've got a Bachelor of Business, double major, marketing. You got an MBA, didn't you? Smarty pants, right? And there are, like Jeremy, one of my business partners, Jeremy, right? I don't even know if he finished high school, and he just made $3 million in the last 3 months. Like, you don't have to be. If anything, the two detriments you get from a business degree, number one is the obvious time ramification, because that's 4 years you could have been learning, becoming a great seller, toughening yourself up mentally, and learning how to lead teams. So those people have an immediate head start, or doing jobs that you hate, because a lot of people come out of university and they think every job is going to be good, and then things get hard and they're like, oh, this isn't what I signed up for, because they don't have a reference point. They don't have a crappy, my job, I literally went on a barge, right, a big excavator, one of those big claw machines, used to go to beaches on the canals in the Gold Coast, rip off all the grass, and my job for 10 hours a day, I had a rake, and I had to go rake the sand for 10 hours to make it look like we weren't there. Every day, for 10 hours a day, right? Yep. That sucked. I did not like that. And because I had a reference point of suck, right? Yeah. I then, I learned that every job sucks a little bit, and I was fine. So those are the detriments to going. But then you also factor in that when you come out of university, you think you know business, and you have no idea. You have no idea how business works, and you want to go and give people who actually operate businesses advice because you think you're coming from a place of knowledge or value adding, and they look at you like you're an idiot. They're like, yeah, I'm sure that works in the textbooks, bro. Let me show you how we actually do it. Yeah. And that then comes with a level of entitlement. Like, people don't come in with that white belt student mindset that they need to, because they think they know enough to business because they got a degree that said they can business. 100%. And it's like, no, you don't. So I think that's I don't think for business, I think hell no.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do it because they don't know what to do too, right?
Yeah.
Like I did my MBA because I was bored.
Yeah. Yeah. But you were also running a band, and you were, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
Stuff
I was doing a lot of things that. At the time, I was working at night time a lot, so doing a lot of music-based things. So during the day, I just had a bunch of free time, and I was like, oh, what can I do? And I kind of fell into an MBA because I'd already had qualifications.
And you were progressing towards something. Yeah. It's a vacuum, and it'll get you, but it's like, that's time you could have been
100%
learning how to actually succeed.
Yeah, but I had no idea because of university, the way it was framed at me. I had no idea which step to take.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I would love for it to be commonplace. Yeah, right. Like for people to know, if you're in that position and you actually have a desire to be successful, you got to be motivated for it to work. Yeah. Don't go to uni. Do sales, preferably low ticket. I actually think fundraising is the best out of every first job that you could do coming out of school or something like that, because working with charities and stuff, you're not relying on the benefits of any products. You actually learn how to deal with emotion, and that comes in really, really handy. So I think that, and it's low ticket, so you get a lot of repetitions as well, compared to like high ticket, where low ticket you'll get 100 pitches a week, high ticket you'll get 3 pitches a week. You just get better. Yeah, the repetitions make it a lot faster. So I think that's, if you're unsure of what to do, go do some charities door to door in a shopping center. That's or something else low ticket that you can get the reps in and learn how to deal with emotion. And I think that's gonna kind of wrap us up really well, because the reason we started this channel was the mission that you and I had together, right? For reference, Zach and I, we met up. I was a camp counselor at like a personal development style youth camp. So we just got a bunch of there was like 70 odd kids between 16 and 18, and we put them up in the mountains with no cell phone coverage. This is like a Rotary program, and they just bring in a whole bunch of motivational speakers in an environment where these kids aren't, where you can change because everything's so different, and just change these kids' lives forever. And Zach was, the first year I did that, Zach was one of the camp, I wouldn't say camp kids, awardees was the thing. And
the kids.
But we found a passion for leveling people up and changing their lives, and we then turned that into a business. We've now been awarded for being the best business at that, but we want to scale that. And I think if you're really looking for those who have made it all the way to the end of this podcast, nice little Easter egg for you to know, the whole point behind us doing this is we've now got the content that we use in our businesses that we know works, and we just want to get it to as many people as we can. We want to be able to change people's lives, and the ultimate way that you can change someone's life isn't by giving them something, giving them money, giving them support, giving them whatever. It's by inspiring them to go against all the people holding them back, even if they're doing it for the right reasons. Take that step on the journey that in your heart you're meant to do, and don't ever give up until you get what you want to do. And we've got a whole channel now that we're going to dedicate to that. I really hope you guys got a lot of value out of today. We're going to keep trying to level it up, keep improving, move it forward. I'm just super excited about what we're going to do here. Do you have any final words for the people?
No, that's it. Go get it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Start the journey.
Start your journey, right? Keep going when you're on it and level up when you're on it, and don't throw in the towel until you get it. Thanks, everyone.